Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, good smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is Hiker Trash Radio. Hey, if you like what we're doing, help us out. Take just a minute, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't like what we're doing, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, let's get to this week's guest, veteran, thru hiker, and author, Jessica Pekari. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, Jessica. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And you know, when we arranged this episode, I reached out to you. I have to be completely honest here. I did not realize at that time that you had set the FKT for the PCT southbound. And it wasn't until maybe about 2 weeks ago when my cousin reached out to me, sent me a message. She says, hey, you should talk to Jessica Pekari. She just hit the FKT on the PCT. And of course, I recognized the name because we'd already set this up. And I said, yeah, I'm talking to her. I'm going to talk to her. But, you know, I feel a little bit embarrassed that I did not realize that about you when I reached out to you.
Oh, man. Really, it's not a problem at all. I am really terrible with social media. So even going into the hike, I didn't post anything about it. As I was hiking, I didn't even post about it at all. I understand why you didn't realize that I had set the female Sobo FKT.
Yes, congratulations on that. And a big shout out to Bindi, trail name Bindi, my cousin, who let me know this fact. And I wouldn't be completely ignorant talking to you today. So thank you, Bindi.
Yeah, thank you, Bindi. You're awesome.
Nice. Now, Jessica, I have to imagine that in all your time on the trail, you got at least 2,600 miles under your feet. So in all your time on the trail, have you picked up a trail name, or were you moving so fast on the PCT that you didn't have a chance to pick up a trail name?
So I actually attempted the southbound FKT in 2020 during COVID. And at the time, there was hardly anybody on trail. And then going southbound, there's definitely nobody on trail. And so after a few hundred miles, I was like, I am not going to get a trail name. And so I kind of just fixated on that. And I'm like, man, I'll just come up with my own. But in 2008, when I came back from my first deployment on R&R, I went to Browning, Montana, which that's where my tribe's from. And I was actually gifted a Native American name through the tribe, through the chief at the time, Chief Earl Old Person. And the name that he gave me was Ishputaki, which means flies high woman in Blackfeet. And I was like, man, that name gives me so much strength that I just felt that it was the right thing to do, just to go by that. So I shortened it to Flies High. And that's where my trail name came from.
Fly tie?
Flies High.
Flies high. Flies high.
Yeah.
Got it. Nice. And you said Ishputaki?
Ishputaki, yes.
Okay. All right. I love that.
There you go. You speak Blackfeet now.
I'm bilingual, finally.
Oh,
yes. Thank you. Yeah. And you brought up a couple of topics that we're going to explore a little bit later, including your military involvement, your veteran status and your deployments, as well as your heritage. I'm very interested to hear about both of those. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But I want you to think about this episode like we were out on a hike. This is a thru hike we're doing tonight for an hour and a half or so. And, you know, I like to take the trail name phenomenon and apply it to the episode. So I'm going to be on the lookout for something funny, something strange, something peculiar that happens, maybe a turn of phrase that really catches my ear, and that might end up being the trail name for the episode.
All right. Awesome.
Okay. So we're going to take a little trip down the trail tonight, and I have to start out. Our listeners want to know. So, Flies High, are you hiker trash?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
100% hiker trash, no pause.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Now, typically, when someone says, yes, I'm hiker trash, they have in mind the hiker trash moment where they realize that, you know what, I might be hiker trash. It may be because they slept in a bathroom overnight. It may be because they washed their clothes in a shower. It could be that they picked food off a plate of a stranger or out of the trash. I mean, do you have a hiker trash moment, Flies High?
I have so many. Not showering as often as, I probably should have. I smelled so bad at the end. I took 2 showers, and one of the showers I took was only because I went into Hiker Town, and the guy there was like, when's the last time you had a shower? And I just thought, oh my gosh, I smell that bad. And he's like, you could take one real quick. But I would say in that moment, I was like, I'm definitely hiker trash.
Hang on a second. Are you telling me that in 2,600 miles you had 2 showers?
That's correct. That is correct.
That might be an SKT, and that's not slowest known time. That's smelliest known time.
Oh, I smelled so bad. Yeah, it was pretty bad. My mom actually, when she picked me up at the finish, she was like, "Oh, girl." and I was like, "Mom, do you have deodorant?" And she's like, "Yeah, I got deodorant." And I just started lathering myself in deodorant. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is the best I've smelled in a long time." And it wasn't until after I was able to shower and get cleaned up that she finally had the heart to tell me that I still smelled, even with all the deodorant caked all over me. So
yeah, and if you're listening to this, you're missing out on. She didn't just put deodorant under her armpits. She's like making motions. She put it over her arms, her shoulders, any bit of exposed skin. I imagine you were rubbing that deodorant on.
Oh yeah, all over my clothes, everywhere.
Clothes too.
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought I smelled great after smelling myself for, that long without a shower. I was like, man, I smell incredible.
It's all about context, right? It's about context.
Yeah. I was like, I could always smell worse. Probably not, but it could always be worse.
That might be a candidate for the episode title, the trail name of the episode. I could always smell worse.
Oh yeah. For sure.
I'm writing that down right now. Now, Flies High, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before?
I haven't. I am not a huge podcast person at all. Even when I'm out hiking and stuff, I'm sort of just always in my mind.
Okay. Now, I only ask because I want to make sure that you know what you're getting into. And if you don't, that's even better. But we do have a segment towards the end of every episode called the Hiking Hack, where I'm going to ask you to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. So don't be surprised when we get there.
Okay. Sounds great.
All right, let's get to our first segment.
Trailblazers Toolkit.
That's right. It's time for the Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. Now, Flies High, I love to talk about gear on the podcast, and I love to hear about the most important item in my guest adventure gear. So if you were preparing for your next adventure and I was the one providing you with all your gear, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? Give me all the details on that piece of gear. Tell me why you got to have it out there. And this could be any kind of gear, type of item. It could be gear, could be apparel, could be a luxury item. So Flies High, what is that item in your toolkit?
I'm trying to think of the name, but it is my P-Rag. Just because you're not always able to make it to an area where you can pick up toilet paper. And as a female, we need that. And I just felt like it saved me the hassle of just looking for toilet paper. And also, I guess, the extra weight of having to carry the excess of TP. So definitely the P-Rag. Was
that a Kula cloth?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, that's the name, the Kula cloth.
Okay.
Oh my
Kula
gosh.
cloth.
I was actually, out of all the times that I've been hiking, I wasn't introduced to it until right before the PCT. And I'm so glad. My friend actually told me about it, and I'm so glad that she did, because it definitely saves you, or saved me. So, yeah.
Now, I've talked to a couple of people about Kula cloth and P-rags. Don't be surprised. But they said that they had their Kula cloth on, like, have you seen janitor's keys that are like on a cable?
Yeah.
So they had it they had the clip onto the backpack somewhere, and it was on a cable. And so they didn't have to take off their pack or anything. And they just, pulled down the cable and were able to use the Kula cloth like that. I imagine, that really contributes to the efficiency. That if you had a system like that, that might have helped you get to the FKT.
Yeah, I actually put mine on a carabiner, and then I clipped it on the front of my belt. And I was about a week into the hike before I realized, like, what am I doing? I need to clip this towards the front. And then I never had to take off my pack.
Very efficient. Very efficient. All right.
It's the hiking pole.
All right, time for the hiking pole. And that's pole spelled with 2 L's, flies high, like a survey, not like the thing you carry in your hands out there. Now, this is a 7-question survey that's going to help me give you a score on the sanity scale from 1 to 100. Now, anybody who has done the PCT and set an FKT on the PCT, it's an automatic 40-point deduction. So your top possible score tonight is 60.
All right. Starting off great.
Starting off great. That's right. That's right. Now, this is completely subjective. It's whether or not I agree with your answers. This is not rapid fire. I'm going to ask you a question that's related to hiking, and you're going to give me your answer, and you're going to explain your answer. You're going to show your work, just like you're back in high school.
All right.
All right, because showing your work is going to help me score your answers.
Sounds good.
Okay. You nervous? I know you haven't listened to the podcast, so you have no idea what's coming.
I have no idea what's coming.
Okay. So I have the introductory hiking questions, and I have the advanced hiking questions. I mean, you set the FKT on the PCT. I feel like I need to go to the advanced questions for you.
One of each.
Should we alternate?
Yeah, let's alternate.
We can do that. We can do that. Okay. Question number 1. When you're on the trail, and I know that, during the COVID year, there weren't a lot of people out there. And I know that on the southbound FKT, there were not a lot of people out there. But when you're on the trail and there are other people out there, what are your top 3 topics of conversation on the trail?
Normally,
what do you like to talk about out there?
I'm trying to think about the people that I've come across and what we have had discussed. I know one of them was like trail conditions, because most northbounders, they want to know what's coming up. What should they prepare for? And I'm the same way. Secondly would probably be if there's any trail magic or something of that nature coming up. And third, I don't know. Just how's it going, I guess? How are you doing?
Okay. I'll accept that. You listed 3 things. We'll take that. Okay. Question number 2, what's on your feet out there? Boots or trail runners?
Trail runners. And I went through a lot of them. My trail runners did not hold up very well. The tread kept coming off, but I knew going into it from 2020 that I would need a fresh pair at least every 500 miles. But I actually carried an extra pair of shoes on the back of my pack. And
wow.
So I had my regular trail shoes, and then I had some really, really cush road runners. And when I would hit about 30 miles, I would switch out to those, and it felt incredible. Like I had a fresh pair of feet. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, that might have been something you saved for your hiking hack at the end, but you just gave us a good hiking hack right there. I mean, changing out your shoes after 30 miles, it gives your legs new life. Mm-hmm. These particular pair. Yeah.
Yeah, because all those pressure points, they change with the different pair of shoes. And I was only wearing them, 10 to like 15 miles in the evening. And so I kept those same pair of shoes the entire way from when I first picked them up at my first resupply all the way until towards the end.
Nice. Nice. Worth the extra weight?
Oh, definitely. If I had to do it all over again, I would still carry them.
Okay. Not a question on the hiking pole, but just a curiosity question. What was your pack weight on the PCT? Your base weight?
Yeah, how I get that question a lot from friends, and I'm like, I don't know. My base weight was probably between like around 12 pounds. I wasn't like super ultra light, I guess, but ultra light enough. And then once you throw all the food, I don't know. I would say it went up to a good like 40, 45-ish, just with the long food carries and then the excess water.
Okay. Now, how would you again, this is not part of the hiking poll. I'm just curious. I go off on tangents, which is completely acceptable because I'm the host. How would we break up categories of base weight? I mean, what is ridiculous ultralight? What is ultralight? What is approaching ultralight? I mean, what is the break off on each of those, do you think?
As far as weight goes, I think a ridiculous amount of ultralight would be like a sub 5 pounds, which I have seen people post about their, like what they're carrying. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are incredible. And then the next level would be 8 pounds, and then maybe just go up 4 pounds from there.
Okay. So you're in the approaching ultralight category.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. All right. Question number 3, toilet paper, bidet, leaves, rocks, sticks, snow, or something else?
Moss. No. Toilet paper and a bidet. Can I choose 2?
Both.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Double coverage.
Oh yeah. You got to clean yourself every now and then, especially if you're only taking a couple showers the whole time. So yeah. That's
right. And it's funny you said moss right off the bat because, I've done a lot of interviews on the podcast. This is like episode 390 something. And only one other person has said moss. And that was the person I talked to 2 nights ago. So to have moss appear in the podcast in back-to-back episodes is pretty weird.
That is great. Moss is great if you need it.
That's what he said. He said it is the best. Hands down, moss is the best way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All
right. Question number 4. When it comes to your sleep system, what do you prefer? A sleeping bag or a quilt?
A quilt. It is just because of the weight. It's lighter. And I didn't have any difficulties with the quilt that I carried. I really liked it.
Do you want to give a shout out to the manufacturer of that quilt?
Enlightened Equipment.
That's like 90% of the quilts out there are made by Enlightened Equipment, it seems like.
Yeah, and it's held up over the years. So I first got it in 2019 and it's still going strong. So I will continue to use it.
Okay. Question number 5, I believe. Breakfast in camp, on trail, or no breakfast?
On trail. Actually, all of my food I ate while walking. I never ate breakfast at camp.
Is that part of the efficiency issue and being in a FKT attempt?
That, and it's also like I like to do ultras, and I sort of just tackled it the same as I would do an ultra. An ultra, I just grab and go. And I feel like especially in the beginning, those first couple of weeks, you're incredibly sore, at least I was, and stopping just made me sore. And then it took me a minute to just get warmed back up. So I just eat and walk.
Okay. Question number 6. When it comes to food out there, stove, cold soak, or stoveless?
Cold soak. Yeah, I cold soaked the entire time.
I understand the efficiency of that, but did you enjoy that?
I think that I was so tired and so hungry that I would have enjoyed eating dirt. It did not bother me at all. And then once you got into Southern California, it was really hot, so it didn't matter. You got a warm meal anyways.
Okay. I've tried cold soaking, Jessica. Not a fan.
No?
No.
Yeah, it definitely takes some getting used to.
You might have lost some points there, but that's okay. That's okay. Question number 7. Let's see here. I want you to rank the following in order of your preference. I'm going to give you
Okay,
3 items. I want you to tell me your favorite, your next favorite, and then your least favorite. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First one, 5 miles severe uphill, 5 miles severe downhill, 20-mile road walk.
So, which I would prefer to do first. All
Yes.
right. The 5-mile climb first, the 20-mile road walk, and then lastly, the 5-mile descent.
Okay. And why is that?
Descending hurts. And especially on the PCT, you work so hard on a climb and you're just like, man, this is going to be an awesome downhill. But like 80% of the time, the trail is not nice and smooth. It's rocky, it's rugged, you're tripping. So I would definitely put that last.
Okay. Now, I want you to stand by because this is the mathematical portion of the podcast. I have to take off my shoes. We're going to use all 20 digits here. It's a complicated formula that I put your answers through here. I've got to carry the 3. We're going to multiply by pi. I'm going to divide by root 5, of course. And then I'm going to make a slight adjustment for the number of pairs of shoes in your pack. And I come up with a score of 32.
132. Wow, I crushed it.
No, 32. 32. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard 130. I'm just going to add 100 myself.
No, whatever makes you feel better. That's okay. That's okay. But, I did have to factor in only 2 showers and the cold soak answer. So, I mean, that contributed.
Yeah, understandable.
Okay. All right. What would your kids say? How would they score mom on the sanity scale?
Oh, man, they'd give me, like, you're being generous. It'd definitely be lower.
Now, how old are the kids?
11, 12, and 13.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Rapid fire.
Yeah. And then that was it. I was like, no more. I'm done.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you had probably had 3 kids under the age of 2 at one point.
I did. They were all in diapers. It was horrible.
Yeah.
So.
You're a mad woman. The score is actually down in the 20s now that I know that. So.
Oh, yeah.
Now, all girls, all boys, or a mix?
So my oldest is a boy, and then my youngest 2 are girls.
Okay. Very nice. And you also have some fur babies.
I do. I have 3. We lost one last year. She was 15 years old, but now we have 3. We have a Weimaraner and 2 Wieslas, and they're both phenomenal trail dogs. So they're with me out on the trails a lot.
A lot of energy. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Now, in our journey tonight, I want to stop before we get too far down the trail. Let's back up a little bit. We'd love to hear about your background, where you grew up, and how in the world you got involved in the thru hiking cult.
Oh, man. This might take a while. I grew up in Wapato, Washington. I graduated there, went to school there my entire life. And then from there, I went to Yakima Valley Community College, and I went to school there for 2 years. And growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. And so I knew if I wanted to further my education, I would need to do something else. And I didn't want to take out student loans and be in debt like all my other friends. And at the time, my sister was in the military. She was in the Army. And I saw everything that she had, and I thought, I want that, And so I enlisted. And I was in the military for 4 years, a little over 4 years. I deployed to Iraq twice. And then we had our son. I got married. And that's when I got out of the military. And then I went on to do what I had joined the military to begin with. And that was to better my education. And so I went to college and I got a bachelor's degree in sports and health science and a master's degree in physical education. And from there, my husband, he's still active duty. And so when I was going to school online. and we were stationed in Germany. And then from Germany, we moved to Texas. And then from Texas, now we're in Colorado. And then as far as my background goes, I am Native American and I'm also Hispanic. So a really good blend of both. And my stepdad, he's Filipino. So growing up, I got all the good food. And then
Nice.
Yeah, it was really cool too, because I got to experience 3 different cultures.
And how did you get involved in the thru hiking cult?
When we were in Germany, I'm not a New Year's resolution kind of person at all, but I had just had my daughter over there and I wanted to get back in shape. And so I told my husband, let's do 20 races. And he's like, all right, you're crazy, but let's do it. And I was like, I want to do triathlons. So it started off with 5Ks that they offered on base there for free. And then we just sort of ventured out and did trail running in the community. And it was really cool. Like we even traveled to different places. Like we did the Paris Marathon, we did the Athens Marathon, the Venice Marathon. And then when we came stateside in Texas, they had a 50K and we registered for that. And I was like, man, I really like this long distance stuff. And my husband's like, let's do a 100-miler. And I'm like, you're crazy, but we did it. So we went from the 50K to the 100-miler. And then we both did a full Ironman together. Not even like we hadn't even gone and did a half. Like we just jumped straight to the full. And I found that I really, really enjoyed the long distances. And then in 2017, my husband was deployed to Africa. And he had messaged me one night and he said, hey, there's this 200-miler. Can you register me for it? And I was just thinking like, yeah, I'll register you, but I'm registering myself too. And so I registered him and I registered myself for it was the Tahoe 200. And I was looking on the website and I saw that there was also a 200 in Washington. And I thought, this is perfect. So I registered for that one. And then I'm like, there's a third one. It's called the Triple Crown. I might as well do that since I'm already doing the other 2. I'd never done any 200s. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So I did those 3 200s. And what I found was with the extremely long ultras, you do a lot of hiking. And if you're a good hiker, you generally do really well at those races. And so my training was basically just a lot of hiking. And then from there, we just did a ton of backpacking adventures, like with our kids, and we take them everywhere. And I just found that I actually loved backpacking more than I did ultra running. So I sort of just shifted and started exploring routes and trails where we were. So that's my lead up to backpacking.
That is quite a journey. And I have some questions. So the majority of people on the planet, they don't run, right? They don't find it enjoyable. They don't do it. Mm-hmm. Those that do, the majority of people who run, I would say they run the shorter distances. They run in 5Ks and 10Ks, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's this smaller group of people who decide they're going to run marathons. And then there are people who decide that marathon, that's just not long enough. Now we're talking like a fraction of 1% of the population on the planet decide, hey, I'm going to run further than a marathon. And yet here you are, you've extended that even further to Ironmans and to 200-milers. I mean, what was the impetus? What was the decision behind just going further and further? Were you trying to find a limit? Was it competition between you and your husband? I mean, why?
I mean, my husband and I were always competing. It's really just me competing against him, but it was really just to see how far I could push myself. And at the time, I didn't realize that I was battling with post-traumatic stress disorder from the military. And I didn't realize that it was helping me, because I would be in like such a bad mood, or little things would throw me off, and I would go for a run, or I would do these ultras and I would come back and I would just feel better. So I think for my mental health, it really, really got me further into it.
Now you did do 2 tours in Iraq, correct?
Correct.
That was the location. 2 tours in Iraq. How long was each tour?
So the first time I went was 14 months. And then the second time I was only there for about 2 months. And I was a medic. So yeah.
I imagine being a medic overseas in Iraq, you had to see some pretty disturbing stuff.
Yeah. And I actually, when I got off trail, I made a promise to myself that I would get the help that I need. And so even to this day, like I go to therapy and it's I've really benefited from it. But I think also, as a lot of people don't realize, I guess, if they're not in the military or not associated with anybody that's in the military, is that as a female, we actually do get put like towards the front lines. For me, I did convoys and I was the only medic for this team of 18. And so when we would go out on missions, we would convoy all around Iraq, and anything that would happen, it was up to me to take care of my soldiers.
Sounds like a lot of pressure, a lot of stress.
Yeah, and I was in my early 20s at the time, so it was I guess at the time I didn't realize it would affect me so much later in life.
Yeah, it is funny. I remember back when I was in my early 20s and thinking I had everything figured out. I'm an adult now. I've got it figured out. And it's only now, 30 plus years later, looking back, realizing how much I didn't know and how much I was still figuring out how to interact with the world. Now you take me, who was not in the military, was not a medic for people who are badly injured. And that was difficult enough, right? It's a big realization for me to know that hadn't had it figured out. I can only imagine, hindsight now for you looking back, and when you're in that position, realizing how much or how little you didn't know.
Oh yeah. I didn't know anything. Looking back, I was just so naive, and everything was still all sunshine and rainbows. But it's really not that way.
Yeah. And you know what? I hate to make generalizations, but a lot of people on the trail are working on things, right? I mean, they're going through things in their lives, and for whatever reason, they now found themselves on the trail. And of course, when you're on the trail, you are in your head for a lot of the time. And so you're kind of working on things. But it's good to hear that not only are you using trail therapy, but you're also in other therapy.
Oh yeah. I think, seeking help from a professional is important. And for those that, they're going out on the trail to find, I guess, peace or inner peace. Like, I don't know how to put this, but like, hats off to them, because there are so many other bad things that they could be doing, but they're choosing positivity and they're choosing to hike instead. And so for that, and those that, they're going to be doing the trail this year, like, thank you so much for taking your mental health seriously.
Well said, Jessica. Now let's talk about the Triple Crown of Ultras. You ran that in 2018. You mentioned Tahoe. Are the other two Bigfoot and Moab?
Yes, those are the other two. Mm-hmm.
And you kind of just glossed over real quick that you ran in all three of them. But hey, let's not overlook the fact that you took first place in the Moab 240.
Yeah, for females.
Yes.
Yeah, I went. So I took second place at Bigfoot, and then at Tahoe I got really sick, and I ended up getting fourth place. And so going into Moab, I felt like I had something to prove to myself, and so I kind of tackled that differently. And I think, with the 200s, it was really fun to see how long you could go without sleeping, and how much you could like push yourself. And I really, really enjoyed pushing my sleep limits. And then the following year I went into the Franklin Mountain 200, and I barely slept there, because I'm like, well, I made it like 40 something hours at Moab. I'm going to see if I can make it like 50 hours without sleeping. And that's when all like hell breaks loose when you don't get enough sleep. So
Yeah, I could be sitting on my couch or standing in front of my TV, and after 40 hours, I would be in serious hallucination territory. I can't imagine exerting yourself for 40 hours, for 50 hours, and not sleeping. When you said all hell broke loose, what happened?
It's like I don't know, it's hard to explain, but you hallucinate and you see things, and I don't know, like your body, it just wants to sleep. But my sister, she came in, actually, she paced me for Moab. I didn't have a pacer for Tahoe, but I'm like, can you please just come hike with me? That's all we're going to be doing. And she's like, all right. And there were a few times I fell asleep walking, and I had no idea what I was talking about. And even to this day, she gives me a hard time. She's like, remember you were talking about some red ribbons in a tree and you were seeing like snakes that weren't there. And yeah, it's pretty intense.
Well, taking first place at the Moab, I mean, that's some pretty elite performance level. Do you know Courtney DeWalter? You guys travel in the same circles?
I know who she is. I think anybody that's in the ultra running community knows who she is. She's just a badass. I've never actually met her or raced with her or against her. But yeah, it would be really cool too.
Nice. Now, how long did it take you to finish the 240 miles of the Moab?
Oh man, I think it was like 78 hours, somewhere around there. I cannot solidify that answer because I don't know.
The last bit was a blur.
Yeah, it's all a blur. I don't really memorize my times or anything like that. Actually, I wrote down what I did the PCT in because I'm like, if you ask me, like, I'm going to be like, I don't know.
Oh, I wrote it down too. Don't worry.
All right, good.
Now, you said a little bit earlier that you're looking for your limit. Have you found your limit?
I think that I haven't. And even on the PCT, like I push myself, but I never push myself over. Like I made sure I was getting like 5 hours of sleep every night, I made sure that when I went in for resupply, I would stop for 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes. Whereas if I was, I guess, trying to really push the limits, I would just grab and go. But I don't know. After I hiked or I attempted in 2020, I wanted to go into this attempt completely different. I really, really wanted to enjoy the trail as much as I could. Not saying that if you're going really fast, you're not going to enjoy it because, at the end of the day, we're only walking like maybe 3 to 4 miles per hour. So yeah, I don't think that I've found my limit yet.
Okay. That seems like a good place to take a brief break, hear from the advertisers, pay some bills, and when we come back, we're going to get into the details of the unsuccessful attempt in 2020 and the successful attempt in 2023. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We're talking to Jessica Pekari, aka Flies High, or if you are as well versed in Blackfeet as I am, Ishpataki.
Nailed it.
Yes, close?
Close.
Okay, nailed it. Look at that. Look at that. Me speaking Blackfeet.
I give you
now
5% on that. 25%. Just
25. That's just payback for your 32. I see what you're doing there. Now, in the first segment, we heard about your background and some of your military experience and some of your ultra running days. Let's talk about hiking now. Now, you did a lot of hiking in preparation for the ultras, for the 200 milers. So was the 2020 PCT attempt, was that your first experience through hiking, or did you have anything that led up to that?
That was my first experience through hiking. Before that, I had done a few backpacking trips, and I had only done one like overnighter by myself, and that was it.
Okay. And did you start out southbound on the PCT, or was it a northbound attempt?
I started southbound. And that was the reason why when I went back this time, I was like, I got to finish what I started. And so I went the same direction.
And what was the rationale for going southbound? Was it the time of year that you were hiking it?
The time of year, my kids were on summer break, but also my family lived in Washington, and my husband was deployed at the time. He wasn't supposed to be. It was a surprise. So it just made sense for me to get everybody in the car and drive to Washington. And really, without my family, there's no way I would have been able to hike it, because they stepped in and took care of my kids while I was on trail.
Okay, so setting out southbound in 2020, you show up to that northern terminus, and what's going through your mind? What are you expecting? This is a huge jump from an overnight to now attempting to go 2,600 miles.
I was wishing I wasn't so stubborn when I got to the monument. It took me a few days to get there because everything was under snow and no one was hiking. They were all turning back at a certain point. And so once I got to the point where they were turning back, I was like, I can do this. And I carried crampons and I carried an ice axe, and I had to use all of that just to get to the monument. And my rationale was, it's going to be better tomorrow. And then tomorrow would come and the trail was still under snow. It was a high snow year. So yeah, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I was stubborn enough that I didn't want to stop.
Kind of like coming on this podcast, not knowing what you're getting yourself into.
Exactly.
Now, what time of the year did you start?
It was at the end of June.
Okay. And did you start the end of June this past year as well?
No, I started 2 weeks later than when I had started in 2020. Okay. But it was also a relatively low snow year for Washington, so I didn't have to carry the ice axe or the crampons. And I vowed that when I went back, I would not be carrying those things.
And in 2020, did you have any prior experience in using those items?
Not really. I live in Colorado, and so I've done, I had used them, but not to that extent with, a backpack strapped on and everything.
Okay. So 2020, you show up at the northern terminus. It's very snowy. It's a pain to get there. You've got your snow equipment. And how far do you go? How far do you get in your attempt?
The first day, I only made it 28 miles the very first day. And I was really disappointed because I thought I was going to be able to move a lot faster, but just having to wear the crampons and the whole process of taking them off, putting them on, taking them off, putting them on. And it was really slow going. And then because the trail was under snow, I didn't know where the trail was. So I had my phone out 99% of the time, making sure I was going in the right direction.
And so only 28 miles. I mean, 28 miles in snow, that sounds painful, but it's still impressive. I think it's impressive. I mean, that's not a small number. But I guess if you're going for the FKT, how many miles in your mind did you feel the pressure to do each day?
42 miles. Because at the time there was only one person that had a southbound FKT, and that was Scott Williamson. And he finished in 64 days. And so I was like, I just got to get 42 miles a day, and then, I can beat it. And so, day one, when I didn't get it, I was like, wow, this is just day one. And I know at least through ultras, the next day, it gets harder and harder and harder until you build up the endurance or the stamina and your feet get strong. But yeah, so it was a letdown.
Okay, so only 28 miles on the first day. What happens next?
A lot of things went wrong. I just kept going. I kept going until I finally came to the realization that I couldn't beat his time unless I did a crazy amount of miles every day. And so I was like, well, I'll just go after the female FKT. And because it's self-supported, no one can come and help you or give you rides anywhere. When I got to Oregon, I ended up getting giardia. and my mom's a nurse. And I was like, Mom, I am not doing so hot. I had a Garmin InReach, so I was able to message her, and she's like, I'll meet you at the trailhead. And so from then I was just like, I don't even care about the FKT. Like, my number one goal is to finish, So she came and she took care of me, and we stayed the night at a hotel, and it was really difficult because it was during COVID. So like nothing was open. Even to get a hotel was tedious. And she doctored me back up, and I went back out on trail the next day.
So you've got medical professionals in your blood.
Oh yeah, my mom's a nurse. My husband, he's a doctor. So
nice.
Definitely get well taken care of.
So did you end up finishing the 2020 PCT?
So I actually made it around 1,400-ish miles. There was just so many fires, and I had just finished hiking out of I forget the town. It's like a small little town. But I had finished making my hike out of there. It was like a 3,000 foot climb out of this town. And I was on a high because, I'm like, I'm over halfway, like it's all downhill from here. But when I came down from there, and I got to the next trailhead, it just said closed. And I was just thinking like, what do you mean closed? And I don't have any cell phone service. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, there's just a huge like sign and caution tape, like the trail is closed per state park or per, I don't know, whoever, they closed it. And so I ended up getting on the road and hiking up a little bit until I had cell phone service. And then I was just trying to see if there's like any reroute at all. But the moment before I found out the trail was closed, I could see smoke in the distance. And I just thought, man, this isn't good. But I'm trying to like use my phone to see where it's at. I'm like, all right, the trail goes this way. But it doesn't. Like, it was where the smoke was. That's where the trail led. And so I was just like, oh man, this is heartbreaking. But I called my mom, and she came and rescued me. And we got a really expensive hotel. All the hotels were taken up because of the fire. Everyone was using the hotels. But luckily we found somewhere that would take us. And I told her, I don't want to quit. Can you drop me off like 100 miles up trail, and then I'll just come back to this section that I skipped later. And she's like, yeah. So she drives me the next day. We go up the 100 miles, and the trail is still closed, and it's really smoky out. And I'm just thinking like, I know smoke is not good for you, and I especially don't want to be hiking in this and not knowing, what the extent of these fires are. And yeah, there was no reroute at all. I had messaged the PCT people, and because it was COVID, they weren't doing any reroutes because it was during COVID. So yeah, the fires, they kicked me off trail, and I ended up going back to Washington. But it was really, I guess the bright side was I was able to spend some time with my kids. I really missed them. And 2 weeks later, I returned back to the trail, hoping that the smoke had cleared. And I hiked for a day, and it wasn't any better. So luckily, my mom stuck around, just to see. And I was like, yeah, there's no way I can continue. Even if I went further up, like there's just fires all over the place.
That is a bummer that all that stuff took you off the trail. But you know what my takeaway is on that story right there? Is that your mom is pretty awesome.
Man, she is incredible. She's incredible. She actually picked me up this time. She drove all the way from Washington all the way to the southern border, and she picked me up. My kids, they're still in school, and my husband being in the military, it's not easy to just up and leave. You know how it is. So I was like, don't even worry about it. My mom's got me. She's awesome. She's incredible. So yeah, shout out to you, Mom.
Big shout out. That's so important for our success to have somebody involved in our lives that is that big of a support.
Yeah. And I think, when you're going into something like this, like I may be putting the miles, in on my feet, but without a strong support system, there's no way that I could have done, what I did, or, be able to hike. And it's not just family as like the support system. It's like all the trail angels out there. They're supplying water where there's like no water. And I can't imagine what the trail would have been like without those trail angels.
Okay, let's fast forward a few years and let's talk about the PCT, southbound PCT in 2023, where you did set the FKT. And what adjustments did you make to your approach to this attempt?
The biggest was not starting in the snow. That was like the biggest. And it ended up giving me like the step up that I needed as far as confidence goes, because the first day I was like just shy of 50 miles, but I ended up stopping before 9 o'clock. I was like, my only goal was to do at least 42 miles a day. And in my mind, I made a plan. I will hike around 38 miles every day in Washington. And then when I got to Oregon, I would bump it up to 42. And then when I got to California, I would really kick it up a notch. But after seeing how I felt after day one, I was like, man, this is great. And so not starting in snow was just like a huge confidence booster.
Yeah, 28 miles the first time and close to 50 this next time in 2023. That had to be a huge boost.
Yeah, and it was so cool too because I had hiked in 2020, like I knew what to expect. I knew at least the first half. I knew where like the good campsites were. And so when I would start at a certain point and I would pass like a campsite that I had stopped at in 2020, and because I'm doing more miles, it was like, yeah, this is awesome. So
nice. Now, did you ever find yourself in 2023 on the PCT? Did you find yourself in situations where you're like, wow, how am I going to get past this? This seems like it's going to really impact my time today.
Oh yeah. The biggest, I think one of the most difficult sections was Mission Creek. That was just horrendous to get through. And then also San Joaquin, the bridge there was completely out. And before even going into my hike, in the Facebook groups, everyone was like, this bridge isn't safe. You shouldn't be crossing it, because it wasn't safe. It was, half of it was in the water.
It was twisted, right? It was like sideways.
Mm-hmm. And I was thinking like, man, I have kids, I have a family. And honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get to the bridge. Part of me is like, I'm just going to take this broken bridge and finagle my way across. But when I got to the bridge, the rangers, they had already blocked it off. Like there was a caution tape around it, like the beginning of it. And then they were also camped out on the opposite side. So even if you wanted to, like it would just, it made no sense. And it looked super sketch. So I was like, I'm not doing that. So I turned back around and I paced back and forth for about an hour until I found what I felt was a safe crossing. But yeah, I didn't know, like leading up, I was like, man, this is not going to stop me. Like I am not going to stop. I'm too far into this. I cannot fail again.
Now, the other day I talked to, I think it was Billy Meredith, who did the Calendar Year Triple Crown this past year. Goes by the trail name Wahoo. And he heard about the bridge being out. And he also heard that they're going to be replacing it like the day after, or the day that he was planning on getting there. And so it was going to be like totally closed. They're going to tear that bridge down and they're going to start replacing the bridge. And he knew that if that if it got taken down before he got there, that could pose a serious problem for him. So he actually got there at, I think, 2 a.m. He kept pushing throughout the day and the night, got there at 2 a.m. and he crossed that sideways bridge at 2 a.m., which was just a wild scene in my mind.
Yeah, when I got there, it was 7 o'clock at night. So I'm like, I have about an hour before it's, dark out. And I thought I found a safe crossing. And there's no way that I could even take the bridge. Plus with the rangers on the other side, like they're watching. But, and there was even a sign that said like, find a different crossing. And so I thought I found a safe route. and I was like, I was going to swim across, but the water's moving kind of fast. And in my mind, I'm like, you know, I was on swim team my entire like childhood. I'm a good swimmer. I'm a strong swimmer. I can do this. But to cross water with the pack is a whole different thing. Plus with your clothes. So I took off my shoes and I put them in my pack. I folded up my trekking poles and I, you know, stuck them to my pack. And I go to get in the water and it is ice cold and it's past my waist. And I just like it took my breath away. And I'm thinking like, if I do this, it's going to end badly. It's going to end badly. Just because right after this was like a bunch of white water. Like if I don't make this section, like I'm a goner. So, my happy little butt walks right out of the water and I'm like, I got to find a different way. And I ended up going like 0.3 miles from where that bridge is in the opposite direction. And I found a safe crossing that the water was like shin deep. And I think by that time I had done so many water crossings that I felt pretty confident in crossing it safely. And so when I get to the other side, then it's just a scramble back to the trail.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that stretch of river and where that bridge is. I've been there multiple times. And that river is a fast moving river, especially if it's a high snow year. And we got a lot of snow in the Sierras last year, as you know. And so that's is a very dangerous situation to try and cross that with a pack. That could be serious implications there.
Yeah. I'm glad that I didn't try to. That would have just been, you know, incredibly dumb. But yeah, that was definitely a scary section besides Mission Creek.
Okay. Another hiker hack right there. Think twice before crossing a white-capped river with your pack on.
Oh yeah. And if, you know, there's always time. You know, a lot of some other hikers that I had talked to said they were going to cross in the morning. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't have time to waste. Like, if they're not crossing by 9, that's like 4 hours of hiking that I'm losing. Plus, you know, hiking at night. But I paced back and forth until, you know, I finally found a safe route. But there's always time.
Now, that's interesting. You bring up that other hikers were waiting until morning. And conventional wisdom, people are thinking, well, doesn't it run the same, you know, all day long? Why would the morning make any difference? Why would they wait till morning? I think I know the answer. Do you know the answer?
I want to say it's because, you know, it gets so cold at night that a lot of the water freezes up. So then it slows that flow and it also lowers the water levels. That's the only thing I could think of. Yeah,
I think it also has to do with snow melt, right?
Yes.
I think that in the heat of the day, there's a lot more water feeding into that river. And so the water's a little bit higher. And in the morning, it's because the overnight temperatures there's not snow melt running off into the river. So, yep, good point. All right. Now, is there a go-to story when people ask you about the FKT of the PCT last year? What is your favorite story to tell? What do you come up with?
So I was trying to learn a new Blackfeet word every single day I was on trail. And I was in Washington, and this was like my first day, I want to say. It was like day 1 or day 2 of like my actual attempt. And my word of the day was "gayo," which means bear in Blackfeet. And so the whole day I'm just like, you know, talking to myself, screaming it to nature, like "gayo, gayo." And it's evening, and I'm like, I don't know, I said it like a million times that day, you know, just that's what I'm working on. So I'm like, "gayo, gayo," and I'm making up like little songs to all these words. And I turn the corner, and sure enough, there's this gorgeous bear, and he's walking across this log, and I'm like it just stops me. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm not like scared. I just thought like it was so incredible, you know, to see this beautiful creature, and it's like walking across this log that I'm about to have to cross over. So I just made it known that I'm there. I'm like, "Hey, Gaia," when I'm talking to this bear, and he goes like, he crosses the log and he goes up the mountain, and then he walks kind of to the right of me, and then he goes away. And I'm I'm like, wow, like, did I like manifest this bear? Because I've been, saying bear the whole day. And I had talked to my cousin and I'm like, hey, what's the word for pizza? I think of all these foods, like, how do you say hamburger? Like, maybe I can manifest one of those.
Yes, I mean, if you're speaking it into existence, let's get some pizza out there. That's what a magical moment to see a bear in all its majesty in that close of a perspective.
Yeah, I mean, he was gorgeous, and that's one of the things I love about the trail is just seeing all the really cool animals and seeing them in like their element is incredible.
So, what was the previous women's southbound supported record of the PCT?
There wasn't one. There was only one name on the up for going southbound. But what is really cool is now there's I think there's 4 now, just from this past year. So 3 were added. So really cool.
The other 3 the other 2 this year were slower than 63 days.
No, actually Nick Fowler, I think he might've been on your show. Like he set the overall southbound.
Right.
And I didn't even know there was anybody else attempting a southbound. And so I kick myself and I go back and forth a lot because I'm like, man, what would I have done different had I known other people were on trail? Like maybe I went to stop for 4 hours at my resupply, like who knows?
Yeah, Nick was a funny guy. He told us about the experience of the hurricane in the Sierras and the ranger trying to stop him from going into the Sierras. And he's like, you don't understand. I'm on an FKT. I've got to go. And she's like, you're going to die. And he had to hole up in a cave for 41 hours.
Yeah. During that, I was actually, I was on trail right before Sierra City. And it was just a miserable day. I think it was definitely one of my top 3 worst days on trail. It was just mostly because it was raining so much and it was so foggy that even when I climbed, there was nothing to see. I was just in a cloud and all my gear got wet. My dry bag that I had my sleeping bag in was not waterproof, even though was supposed to be waterproof. So my sleeping bag was soaked and just everything was drenched. And I was freezing the entire time. I was just so cold. But yeah, it was a difficult day on trail for sure.
All right, let's jump ahead to day 63. You've got the southern terminus in view, in sight. What's going through your mind at that point?
So the day before, I had planned to just hike all night, but my mom was still en route and I didn't want to beat her to the finish. So I actually took a 3-hour nap. But I was an emotional wreck. So, and I ended up beating her to the finish, but I'm so glad I did because I just I bawled. I cried so much. Just even the week leading up to it, because I really, really enjoyed being out there. I loved the feeling of being able to push high mileage. And I loved seeing how my body would respond and how I would adapt to any type of obstacles that came my way. I just really, really enjoyed being on the PCT. And so realizing that it was about to come to an end it's bittersweet. I couldn't wait for it to be over, but I didn't want it to be over.
It's an interesting set of feelings, right? Kind of competing sets of feelings. And I'm not surprised that you're emotional towards the end. That makes a whole lot of sense. Now, tell us about Bombs to Trails. Now, you did the PCT FKT this past year, but you wrote the book Bombs to Trails before that, didn't you?
I did. That was about my 2020 attempt. And I went into my 2020 attempt thinking that maybe I would want to write about it, but wasn't 100% sure. And I used my phone and I recorded every single day on trail, like how it went, how I was feeling, or if something cool happened, I would just bring out my phone and I would talk about it. And what I realized was going into the PCT, it ended up not being about the FKT as I thought it would be, but more, or like the adventure, I guess, of it. But it ended up being more about my military background, how much that affected me on trail, as well as my culture, like how important it became to me while I was hiking. And it's incredible because I went into the hike not knowing that I would get so much more out of it than I could ever even imagine. So my book is... Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. I cut you off. You go ahead.
Yeah, my book is just about my 2020 attempt.
Okay. And what was the takeaway for you? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about the impact of your military experience? What did you learn about your heritage?
With my heritage, nature is so important, and to respect nature. And I've always respected it, but to actually be like in it is a completely different feeling than just saying like, oh, I respect nature, but it's different when you're on trail. Just gratitude, so much gratitude, thankful. Like there's water here, thankful for the little things, thankful for finding a flat piece of land to pitch my tent on, like it's like just the little things that made you so grateful for. And then what was the other, military?
Yes.
Military, it helped me really like just come to terms that I was struggling, and that if I was ever put in the position to where like I could talk about it and maybe shed some light on it, that I would, and hopefully it will, it affect somebody positively, even if it's just one person.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your experiences in that book and for helping others. I'm sure that others have had some realizations about their own lives after having read your experience on the trail.
I really, really hope so. And if anybody has read it, thank you so much for taking the time to read it. I was really nervous to publish it just because you're kind of just putting yourself out there, and, not everyone's going to like the way you write. So my only hope was that it would just help at least one person.
And what's been the reaction? What's been the response from folks?
Actually really good. At least to my face. But no, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and people are like, when are you going to write the next book? But I'm working on it. I'm working on book 2. It's a work in progress.
Is book 2 based on your 2023 experience?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
Based on that. And I went into this attempt different, which I don't want to give like full details, but yeah, the way I started is way different. It's so different. Like you couldn't even think of how different I started this attempt, but I'll leave that story for my book.
Well, I'm intrigued. I need to get an advance copy. So let me know how I can do that.
Oh, you got it.
Now, what is the next adventure for Flies High?
I'm actually prepping for the Colorado Trail this year. I'm going to attempt an unsupported FKT. So,
okay, a la Jeff Garmeyer.
What's that?
I said a la Jeff Garmeyer.
What's that?
Do you know Jeff Garmeyer?
I don't.
Oh, Jeff Garmeyer, trail name legend. He's a calendar year Triple Crowner. He did the Great Western Loop, and he set the FKT on the Colorado Trail, the unsupported FKT.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. He's been on the podcast a few times, but his movie just came out, just a full release on, I think, Prime Video and Apple TV, called Free Outside, about the Colorado FKT. So check that out.
Okay, yeah, I think that popped up on my Facebook, I want to say. I'm terrible with social media, but yeah, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck. Say that again?
I said, well, I'll go after his then.
Okay.
But
best
there's
of luck.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's so many directions to choose from.
That's right. All right. Hey, Flies High, you know where we are right now?
Where are we?
Hiking hacks.
Ooh.
Hiking hacks. This is where you get to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. What do you have for us?
So I would say my top hiking hack for all you cold soakers or non, I guess. I really enjoy dehydrated meals. And although I make some of my meals, I like Mountain House dehydrated meals, but I take them out of their packaging and I put them into a freezer bag. With freezer bags, you can put boiling water in it and it won't melt the plastic. But it really saves a lot of room in your pack. So you're able to carry more food. So that is probably my top hiking hack.
That is a great one. And of course, you didn't have to worry about the boiling water because you are a cold, but it does save a lot of room.
Yeah, anytime I'm with my kids and we go backpacking, I usually do that just because I have to we also carry their food. And so we benefit from the extra space.
Okay. So there you have it. We're just about done here. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Flies High. I want to thank her for joining us this week. Jessica, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
I am on Instagram under Jessica Pekari. And then I also have a website called adventuresonthetrail.com. And my book you can purchase from my website. You can order a signed copy or you can order an unsigned copy off of Amazon.
Okay, well, definitely get the signed copy. Absolutely. Remember to check out Hiker Trash Radio on social media as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at hikertrashradio@gmail.com.
Off the beaten path.
Now, unfortunately, Jessica, we can't always be on the trail. And when we're not, we need to find a way to get our adventure fix. So I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by. This could be a book, movie, a documentary. We call this segment Off the Beaten Path, and it's sponsored by the outdoor clothing brand Magnet Designs, through hiker owned and making quality ultralight craft outdoor gear by hand in Bend, Oregon. Designed on trail, built for trail life. Visit magnetdesigns.com with no E in designs. So Flies High, what recommendation do you have for us in adventure media? And I will stipulate right off the bat that everybody should check out your book, Bombs to Trails. But what else do you have?
Ooh, audiobooks are great, especially for those that can't sit still to actually read a book. I really enjoy audiobooks. A really good audiobook that I would recommend is, I'm trying to remember the title, but it's Grandma Gatewood's. I think it's like A Walk in the Woods with Grandma Gatewood's. Maybe I'm naming two books, but her book is phenomenal, or the book about her is phenomenal.
Good choice. Good choice. All right.
What have we not asked you?
And before we wrap things up, just one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What did we miss tonight?
Oh, man. I guess I just want to thank everyone that's listening and really, really thank my family for their support and my friends for their support, especially my husband, my kids, my mom. Just thank you guys so much. Without you, I definitely would not have been able to hike the PCT.
Well said. All right. Hey, we are finished. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast, Jessica. We wish you the very best in your future adventures, and we'll hope you'll consider coming back on Hiker Trash Radio and sharing some more stories.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if the bridge is out and you're after the FKT. The trail is the trail. Embrace the sock.